The San Diego Strikeforce made a ton of moves so far this offseason, but is it enough to get them into the playoffs in 2024 with such a tough Western Conference? Let's go in the alley and find out. Hey everyone, welcome back to In the Alley. My name is Cody, and tonight we're going to be previewing the 2024 San Diego Strikeforce, a team that almost made the playoffs last year, fell short by a game, and I don't know if 2024 is going to be too kind to them either. We'll obviously take a look at their schedule, we'll take a look at players added, players lost, go through the whole thing that we do of the other, 11 teams that we've done so far. So without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about the San Diego Strikeforce. All right, so another team with a pretty brief history as the tab pops up here. The San Diego Strikeforce are located in, obviously, San Diego, California, with the head coach of Taylor Jenniser. Their arena is the Pechanga Arena with a capacity of 12,000 people. No championships to speak of, and last season they finished 6-9, good for 5th seed in the West. Like I talked in the Northern Arizona preview, had they beaten Northern Arizona with like 4 or 5 weeks to go and everything stayed the same, they would have been the 4th seed, but they didn't. Northern Arizona went on to clinch that spot. They went on to beat Arizona and play in the semifinals. But it's crazy how some things come down to a single game. But let's look at their last 5 years. They finished, or all 5 years cumulative, is 11-35. This is what kind of has given me pause. I've said in previous previews I'm a little bullish on them this season, thinking that they can make the step. I've kind of changed my opinion on that. 2023, 6-9 overall, did not qualify. 2022, 3-13, did not qualify. 2021, along with Bay Area and Quad City, they withdrew. 2020, 1-0 before the season was canceled, so co-champs with Quad City. 2019, I'm kidding on the co-champs, there was no championship crowned. 2019, 1-13, did not qualify, so they have not made the playoffs since they have been a team. Again, like I said, they've been progressively better each season, but they have not gotten over that hump. They have not even had an over 500 season yet. Could this be the year? I think we need to go look at the schedule and find that out, but it could be a rough schedule. Again, I know I say that as a cliche for every schedule, just based on the information we all pretty much know about all the teams at this point, but this one could be exceptionally difficult. So with that said, let's go take a look at the schedule and see if we can piece some wins together for the San Diego Strikeforce. So as the schedule tab pops up here, what I'm alluding to is the more I've connected the dots in my own head, the more I've kind of talked about, teams in the West, and we still have a couple left to do. I was bullish on San Diego. I have completely flipped that opinion. I don't think that they will be a playoff contender this year. The schedule is part of it. It also has to deal with the rosters that other teams have, built. So we'll start off here. They play 2 games at Duke City to start the season, then the Monday home opener against San Antonio, and then they play 13 straight games after a bye week. Just like, was it Frisco? And then Green Bay and Duke City and all of that stuff playing 11 games in a row, but 13 straight games, another schedule that has 13 straight games, and it's not easy. After that bye week, they're at Arizona, and then a back-to-back home and home against Bay Area. They play Bay Area 4 times. They end the season with Bay Area. They're in the middle of the season again after an Arizona game. They play Frisco. They played a home and home against Northern Arizona. I think Vegas is going to be improved as well. This is a very, very tough schedule. They have players that could possibly pull an upset or two. Overall, unfortunately, I like I said, I'm kind of off the wagon here. I've had hope for this team. Just the more I look at it, the more I see this, and we'll talk about the players lost as well. I think that's a huge part of it. But I just look at this schedule and think, man, I don't know if they're going to beat Bay Area at all. That's 4 losses. home and home against Arizona. I don't know. That's 2 more losses. That's 6. 10-6 at the ceiling right now. Like I said, Frisco, that could be another loss. I mean, that's not to say that this team, like I said, can't win. This team can win games. They will win a couple of games. I just don't know if it's even going to be a 6-10. I don't know if it's going to be 5-11. I don't think they'll be the worst team. Someone has to be the worst team. I don't think it's going to be San Diego. I just don't know. I just don't see a lot of wins on this schedule. I'm sorry. I don't. I think a lot of these teams are reloading because they know, hey, there's only 4 spots. There's a lot of smack talk going on between these fan bases, whether it's Bay Area, Arizona, San Antonio, whoever. There's some spots that, that are going to get filled by these playoff contenders, man. And I just don't see San Diego as one of them. I did early on. Trust me, I did early on. But the closer we're getting towards the end of these training camps and the season's about to start, I had to flip-flop. I had to say no to the playoffs. These guys don't make it in, unfortunately. They can prove me wrong. If you're a fan of San Diego and they make it in the playoffs, you can laugh in my face. I'll eat crow. That goes for any other team. Like I said, I'll have a predictions video after the team previews and then wait until the season to start. But I just don't see it with this team. Like I said, I'll eat crow if they make it, but I just don't see it anymore. Unfortunately, my opinion has completely changed. So, that being said, I'll show you why my opinion has changed when we talk about the players added and the players lost. Okay, so let's talk about key additions, key subtractions here. Starting obviously with Nate Davis, traded mid-season from Duke City to San Diego, but 2,832 passing yards, 67 passing touchdowns, 25 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. The running game wasn't really there for San Diego. He was slinging it all around, like he always does. He had 3 great wide receivers he was throwing it to. They're all not back. So we'll see what he can do this season. I'm sure it'll probably be more of the same, just slinging the ball around like he normally does. But it'll be interesting to see, kind of talk about it. But it'll be interesting to see, how he gets his passing game going. At least he's going to have an offensive line here because offensive lineman Jalen Booth returns. I think I said in the Duke City preview that Josiah Hunter got signed. They bring back Chris Ferguson. They bring back Jonte Berry. I mean, the offensive line is there. 3 of them are probably going to start. You're probably going to have one of them on a reserve if they all make it. So I'm kind of looking to see that you've got a pretty veteran offensive line, obviously a veteran quarterback. It's just going to be kind of those skill positions. They do bring back Trayvon Van, so that's good. But Edward Vander was more of the guy last year. I think he played more games. Not to say Trayvon Van can't take over, but I think this offense might struggle just a little bit. However, when you look at the defensive side, there's a lot to choose from. But I'm taking a guy who I think is probably... I'm picking the guy who I think honestly is kind of that go-to guy on the defense, and that's linebacker, defensive back DJ Morgan. 69 tackles, 4 tackles for a loss, 3 pass breakups, and 1 fumble recovery. He kind of split time between those positions last year. Sometimes they need him as like that 4th defensive back. Sometimes, and I can't remember if it was still Clayton Glasgow was still like he was just kind of that reserve. Whatever it could be, if he was hurt, I can't remember, but sometimes he would split time at linebacker. So having DJ Morgan back and Clayton Glasgow back can really help out that linebacker position. Morgan can slot back to a defensive back if Glasgow is going to play on the linebacker. So they do sign quite a bit of defensive backs as well. They've got Dexter Reese from Duke City. They've got Justice King, who split time between Northern Arizona and Iowa last year. They bring in J.J. Dallas from Tucson. So the defensive backs are pretty solid as there too. They obviously have some rookies as well. But the defensive line is probably going to be their strength. They have signed 7 veteran defensive linemen, including Armani Carey, Byron Cooper, Ben Moa. Is it Javian Williams? Javian Williams, let me know. I'm going to call him Javian because it just kind of sounds cooler. They bring in Kaim Smith, VJ Mallow. All these guys have played at least a game or started an entire season last year. So I even forgot Tavita Moanga, former Quad City Steamwheeler. They have 7 defensive linemen. They get their pick of the litter. Some of those guys might not make the cut. So whoever they don't pick is probably off to, greener pastures for a different team. I'm sure they will get signed somewhere. So I think the defense is actually going to be pretty solid. The secondary is what kind of gets me a little bit. Not to say that they'll struggle, but again, we've such a tough Western Conference here. You've got passers like Dalton Snead. Well, Dalton Snead's still going to pass it, but he's more dual threat. Castronova's going to come in and sling it all around. You've got freaking I'm blanking on his name. Daquan Neal. Jesus. Yeah, Daquan Neal coming through. I have a tough time. I mean, I think the defense for San Diego is going to be solid, but I think everyone else in the West is revamped. I do. I think they've all reloaded. Bay Area is reloaded. Arizona is reloaded. San Antonio is going to be sneaky good. I mean, I have a tough time thinking that San Diego, they can make a playoff push, but they're probably just going to get pushed back. That's not to say that they can't make the playoffs. I just have a tough time seeing it. You heard it in the schedule preview. I don't know if they can sweep Arizona or even win a game against Arizona. I don't know if they win one of those 4 games against Bay Area. They've signed quite a bit of players with quite a bit of experience, so that can help. But is it enough? I'm not sure. Let's go take a look at the key losses, though, because that's where some of the firepower that they won't have this year is coming to. All right, so key losses here. We're going to talk about Kentrez Bell first. We have another wide receiver after that. It's kind of a tandem, but Kentrez Bell, he's off to Sioux Falls. 82 receptions, 1,092 receiving yards, 24 receiving touchdowns. Good for first team all indoor football league last season. And I'm just going to combine the other ones as well. Wide receiver Carlos Thompson, also off to Sioux Falls. 50 receptions, 661 receiving yards, 16 receiving touchdowns, 991 kick return yards, and 1 kick return touchdown. I didn't put him on here, and I haven't seen anything, but I don't know if Marquise Hoodie Rogers is back or not. I haven't seen anything. They haven't put anything out. So if he's gone too, those are your 3 starting wide receivers from last season. They do have Jordan Crest that comes back. I think if I looked it up, he only has like 60 receiving yards. So he got into the game. He's not a Kentrez Bell. I mean, it's simple as that. Not putting anyone down. It's just these guys have stats. These guys have a lot of stats. You look at those stats right there between just Bell and Thompson. That is 1,700 yards of Davis's 2,800 yards. Over half. Hoodie Rogers takes up more of that too. So it's the passing game for me that's going to be tough. Now, I know they do sign Dello Davis. I know that they do resign Jordan Crest. They have Trayvon Van back. They've signed some rookies. I'm still kind of worried about that offense. So, can they go up against some of these elite defenses that are there in the Western Conference? If there's a quarterback I would trust to do it, it would be Nate Davis. But that's the thing that gets me, though. I'm just not sure about the firepower on that offense. It's good. It's not great. I mean, it's good enough to win some games. I don't know if it's great enough to make the playoffs. We're going to look at the defensive side of the ball here. Defensive back David Haney. He's off to the Ottawa Red Blacks in the CFL. 30 tackles, 2.5 tackles for a loss, 2 interceptions, 14 pass breakups, and 1 fumble recovery. Guy was all over the place. Look at those stats. You see why he's earned his tryout or his spot in the Canadian Football League. Like I said, it's a key loss, but I think with what they've signed, veteran laden signed, is it truly a key loss? I don't know. Time will tell. I think they'll like to have him in there too. You can always have more depth. You can always have more depth, injuries and things along those lines. But I like I said, I think the defense is going to be all right. I think the defense, especially that defensive front, the linebackers, defensive line, I think that's going to be good. It's that secondary, and why I have David Haney here, that kind of scares me. I think having more depth on that defensive secondary for me, like I said, when you have, pardon the pun, a gunslinger like Castronova, when you have Dalton Sneed, Daquan Neal, who can use their legs and get into that second level, I think that secondary is going to be important. Are they going to get carved up? No, maybe. It's just tough for me to think that San Diego is going to be a playoff caliber team. That's not to say that they're not going to win games. Maybe go 500. But like I said, it's a weird strategy for me. It's a weird strategy for me in the sense that they are going the veteran route. I know a lot of people bring in a lot of rookies. I mean, from the previews we've done, Green Bay is only bringing in 8 players from last season. The rest are rookies. This is a complete opposite of that. And that's not picking on Green Bay or anything. That's just saying that these are different strategies that different teams and coaches and things, that they use to try and solidify their team and see how's it going to work. Again, everything's fluid. Rosters are fluid. We don't know if all of these players obviously are going to make the cut, however many rookies they've brought in, who all makes the final rosters. Hopefully that's coming in a couple of days, but hey, this is what we have, or at least what I have as of right now. And very, very, very veteran heavy. I'll see if it works out. I have hope. It's just kind of been lost over the last couple of weeks of me talking about this stuff. So, yeah, let's go give some final thoughts here, and we'll get out of here with the San Diego preview. All right, so final thoughts here for the San Diego Strike Force. Like I've alluded to in the previous segments, I think this team is good. I don't think this team is great. Stacking Geneser up against the other coaches in the West, it's no knock on Geneser. You just have a lot of championship caliber coaches, a lot of championship caliber players, teams that have won championships before. Could he knock down the door? Yeah, sure. Awesome. That'd be great if he does. It'd be kind of fun. Get some new blood in there. I just have a hard time seeing it. And that's not a knock on him. I'm just saying there are a lot of great coaches in the Western Conference. Not taking anything away from the East. Focus on the West right now. A lot of great coaches in the West. A lot of championship caliber coaches in the West. And I think that's just enough to squeeze this team out of the playoffs. I think it's enough to kind of keep them down. I think there's probably, like I said, 2 playoff spots open, 6 teams battling for it, and in my opinion, out of those 6 teams, there's probably a little bit of a separation of 3 and 3. So we'll get to that with later previews, but I don't know. I like the strategy of bringing in a lot of veteran talent. You bring in players that have played all season last year. You bring back players that know your team, know your roster. I'm curious to see how it works out. If it works out. Obviously, injuries and everything notwithstanding, we're talking about this pretty much on paper before season starts. It's intriguing. I mean, we've talked in 11 other previews or something along those lines of, all these, rookies coming in and getting these guys acclimated and stuff. This is just a complete switch from that. So I'm really, really curious to see how it's going to work out. It sucks, man. I had hopes for this team, but the more I've talked about teams from the West, my opinion on Northern Arizona had changed. I didn't necessarily have them in the playoffs, but the more I talked about them, the more I'm leaning towards them maybe making it. I've gotten some San Antonio fans telling me that their team's really, really good. I mean, I don't have a frame of reference on them, so I take their word for it. Okay, let's throw them in the playoffs. Who's going to be that 4th team? Is it Northern Arizona? Is it San Antonio? We still have to talk about Tucson and Vegas. Those guys are not going to be pushovers. You have championship caliber coaches in those two teams as well. It's going to be a fun season. It's going to be a long, tough season for all of these teams. I think San Diego could pull an upset or two. I do. I think that they could pull an upset or two. But that schedule, man. Bay Area 4 times. Arizona twice. I mean, at Frisco from the East. I just have a hard time seeing them getting over 500. I'll be honest. I have a tough time seeing them getting over 500, which is a shame because they've never done it before. At best, I could probably see this team at 8-8. I don't know if 8-8 gets you in the playoffs, man. I just don't. The more I've talked about these teams, the more I've realized, like, hey, I think the 4 teams in the West are all going to be over 500. I think 9 and 7 for that minimum record is going to be your 4th seed. Everything else above that, 10 wins, 11, all the way up to 16 if someone goes undefeated. I mean, I don't see that, but it can happen. I just have a tough time seeing San Diego make the playoffs this year, unfortunately, which is a shame, because if you would have asked me before I even started doing these previews, I'd be like, oh yeah, for sure. I think they can make it. No questions asked. But hey, the more I've talked, maybe I've just talked myself out of it, like I've tried to talk other teams into the playoffs. San Diego's just kind of fallen off. It sucks. It sucks if you're a San Diego fan. Again, it's just one guy's opinion. That's all I am. But that's why we play games, guys. At the end of the day, that's why we play games. They can go on a tear, but 13 games in a row, Bay Area 4 times, and you play Bay Area and Arizona in like back-to-back weeks twice. So even if you give your all against Arizona and win, you got Bay Area the very next week. Or if, you get rattled by Arizona and you somehow pull out an upset against Bay Area or something like that. And again, these are all hypotheticals. I mean, it's just, I have a tough time seeing it, man. I do. But that's it. Those are my final thoughts for the San Diego Strike Force this year. I think they can improve. I think they could win more than 6 games. Maybe. I hate seeing it's just kind of more of the same, but I'm curious to see how that veteran strategy works. Can they do it? Let's find out in a couple of weeks. But with that, guys, I'm going to sign off here. Hope you're enjoying the videos. We just have 4 more left to do. Sioux Falls is tomorrow, and we're just going to kind of keep rolling along until the start of the season. I've got 4 more previews. I'll give my playoff predictions and champion, and then it's just holding pattern until Arizona and Northern Arizona kick off. So with that, I'm taking off here, guys. Like, comment, subscribe. Please keep sending your feedback. I really appreciate it. Helps me out a ton. Sioux Falls tomorrow. We'll get after it. Until then, guys, see ya.